Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Seacrest. I'm one of the systems engineers here at Jamf Software. And today I'm excited to have my former employer, Jahan Aziz from National Geographic here, to talk a little bit about his custom API workflows with his mobile devices and FileMaker Go. So without further ado, here's Jahan Aziz. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. As he said, I'm Jahan Aziz, and this is JSS API and custom workflows. So here's our mug shots. So I'm the manager of Apple Services at National Geographic. I've been with National Geographic for 17 years. I started off as a cartographer there, and then got into IT about 9 years ago. The last 5 years, I'd been trying to get Casper in. We started off with LandDesk, and then we switched to Dell Case, and the Mac population was the minority. Then Scott, about 4 years ago, jumped ship to Jamf, and then another one of my techs, Daniel Patnode, some of you may know him, also left me for Jamf, but it's good, and but I couldn't have him, I couldn't be more proud to have a couple of guys that I helped to be able to move on to a great company like Jamf. So finally last year, our Mac population got to be 50% of the total, and I finally got approval to bring Casper in. So the agenda today, we're going to talk about the background story of, how we came about to get this whole API thing working, what the ideal workflow was that my FileMaker developers wanted when they came to me, and how we identified the different deployment options, and then we're going to talk about how I leverage the API to get things done. So what we wanted, we've been working at National Geographic to get a consolidated directory for about 5 years. We have data in PeopleSoft. We have some in Active Directory. We've got stuff in the antiquated telephone PBX. But no place was there all of that information in one simple directory. So FileMaker, being what it is, and being able to read all those types of databases, was able to pull all this information together into one place. And we want it to be offline. We want it to be emergency preparedness, disaster related. We've had a couple instances in DC where, there was no telephones. You couldn't make a call. Internet was down. Oops, sorry. So we, wanted to have something that could be on people's phones, that in an emergency they could look up information, find out what to do. So, and the cool thing is that you can, from this app, you can make a call, you can send an email, and it actually won FileMaker's Design of the Year award this year at their developer conference, and that's what popped up on me. That's the award we got this year. So the FileMaker developers were really stoked about that. So this is just to show you what the app looks like. So this is for the iPhone version. You got the home screen of the directory. Then you've got, if you click on a department, you see all the departments you can scroll through. When you click on a department, you get the list of users that are in that department. And right here, you can click on that little telephone icon and call the person. When you actually click on a person, you get the detail, you get their picture, you get where they're located, telephone number and email have been obscured to protect the innocent. But again, you got the phone icon there to call, and you got an email icon which will send an email. And you've got the star to favorite them, so you can add them to a quick list, and you see the star across the bottom here, so you can quickly get to your list of favorites. The next screen in the middle here is our CPR trained staff. So you've got the buildings there, M Street, 16th Street, 17th Street, click on a building, it pops up the floor picker, you pick the floor, and then you have a list of people who are on that floor that are CPR certified. So if you've got somebody who looks like they're having a heart attack or something, you can quickly know who to call. Then we've got, this is what the favorites look like after you've added some favorites. And again, quick, easy, tap to call. Then you can make your own groups in here for sending out emails. So you make a group, add users to the group, click the email button, and it opens up the mail app with those users already in the to field. And then the settings page is who that app is registered, who the directory app is registered to, and the button to update the directory. And I don't have a picture of it, but on the settings button at the bottom there, you would see a little badge when there was an update available, so you could go in and click the update. So when my FileMaker developers came to me, they were like, hey, we want you to push out FileMaker Go and this WebClip and install this database on our iOS devices. I'm like, okay, FileMaker's an app, I can do that. WebClip, that's built into MDM, no problem. But this FMP12 file, I can't just push that out. If you give me an IPA file, I can do it. So we had to find a way to get that database onto people's iOS devices. So this is what the FileMaker developers came up with before they came to me. So the user would have to install FileMaker, install Dropbox, go into, configure Dropbox, go in, download the database, click on it. It's going to say can't load the file. You're going to have to click the share and open in and click on FileMaker Go. But wait, we're not done. Then you got to go back to Dropbox to go in and set up the mobile config, the WebClip. So this is 11 user manual steps that they would have to do. So by about step 3, you're going to lose everybody. So I was like, okay, let's think about this a better way, right? So this is the workflow that we came up with to make the experience as user app store friendly, so that it's very as Apple-like as we could. So we start with VPP. Anybody who all is using VPP here? Love it. It's great. So we can push FileMaker Go with VPP. We are pushing the WebClip, a WebClip that launches FileMaker Go and routes them to a hosted FileMaker app store that we developed. Then the user peruses the apps that they want, which are FileMaker Go databases. You click on you download the one that you want. And then at that point is where the API comes in. Once they click to download, we make a call to the JSS API to add that user to the scope for the WebClip for that particular app. So the database downloads into FileMaker Go, and at the same time, the JSS is installing the WebClip so that they can have an app-like icon to click and go right into that database, because we'll have multiple ones of these. So this is a visual of how the workflow goes. We push FileMaker Go, we push the NGS apps WebClip. This is what our app store looks like that we created. The directory one is the one that's almost live. We're still working out a few kinks with the design and stuff, and then of course we got the new iPhone sizes. So our FileMaker developers are redesigning it to work with all of the sizes of iPhones. And then this mobile exploration portal is another custom one that is in development, but it's the next one that's going to be made available. In the middle, the user clicks on the WebClip, it brings them to the store. You click on an app, and then you see a description of the app. You scroll down, you've got screenshots that you can peruse, and you click download. So when the user clicks download, they are prompted to put in their network authentication. We do this so that we know, one, for security to make sure random person isn't downloading our whole directory, and second, to capture who that user is. So the download starts, and the current list of users is pulled from that are limited to the scope for the NGS directory WebClip, is pulled from the JSS with the API. The new user is added to that list, and then that whole list is written back into the JSS so that the WebClip can be downloaded. Now, and the reason we're doing this, aside from the security, is we don't want to install the WebClip for this directory when it doesn't exist on the person's phone. So, they would click it and then nothing would happen. So the WebClip gets pushed to their device, and the user sees it on their home screen. They click on it. It opens FileMaker Go and goes right into the directory app. So learning how to leverage the JSS API. So first of all, we got to set up the workflow. So again, you got to enroll your users and invite them to VPP. You got to purchase the apps VPP. Now, so even free apps you can purchase with VPP, and by purchasing free apps with VPP, you can auto install them on your users' devices without the App Store prompt. And then we set up the configuration profiles for the web clips, and then we wrote the script for utilizing the API. So in this example screenshot, we've got, this is for the FileMaker Go iOS VPP app assignment. So we're in the Users tab, VPP assignments, apps, iOS apps. So you see we bought 2,000 copies of FileMaker Go because, hey, it's free. It doesn't cost us anything. And then you scope that to all users, and it'll automatically get installed on those that have enrolled in VPP. So then this is what you do with the WebClip. So this is for the App Store. So the WebClip syntax, I got two examples here. So in iOS 7, you would have to, the syntax for launching an app or launching FileMaker and going to the database, you'd have to have this JavaScript window location, and then the URL of FileMaker Pro, go to the IP address that we want, and then open up the database on that FileMaker server. In iOS 8, they changed that. They got rid of the JavaScript bit, so it's a little bit shorter and easier, but it works. So depending on your environment and what your users have going on, and this is easy to create, a scope for both if you need to. And you just scope this to all devices that have FileMaker Go installed, so then you're not installing this on people who aren't going to be able to use it. So here's an example of the NGS apps WebClip configuration profile. So it's you give it a name, you put in that the URL string, give it an icon, and you're good to go. So when the database is on the device, the URL is simplified. So this is the WebClip for the directory. So again, it's a WebClip to launch FileMaker Go and open something up. But this time, they've downloaded the directory. It's local. So we don't need an IP address. So you replace where the IP address would be with the tilde or the URL encoding equivalent of %7e. So either one works. I've tested both. So like the FileMaker documentation changed, and they were recommending %7e. So that's what I'm using now. And so this again, you scope to all devices, but then you limit it to a list of users. So initially it was limited to like one test device, and then so that way it doesn't get installed until we want it to be. So here's an example of what the FM Go directory WebClip looks like. Here we're using the %7e instead of the tilde. And again, we made an icon and pushed it, so now this is ready for the workflow. So to figure out how to do this, this is the API is built into your device, into your JSS. If you go to your JSS URL /API, you can see all the stuff that is exposed to you to read, write, create, delete in the API. So in this example, I've clicked on mobile device configuration profiles to expand the list and see everything you can do. So in this example, I can see at the bottom, the last get there, which is read. I can get a subset of a configuration profile if I know what the ID is and the subset of information that I want to get. So we'll see this used shortly. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the ID is when you're looking at a configuration profile or a policy, you've got in the URL string, there's an ID equals, and that's what the ID for that particular profile is. Now, I'm just going to kind of whiz through. This is the whole script just to show you. Thank you, Andrew. This is modified from Andrew Sego's JSS API ID static group.sh, heavily modified, but it gave me the framework and inspiration on how to modify this to do what we want to do. So it's a lot of boring stuff, but I'm going to go over all this in detail here in a second. Okay, it's not that scary, really. So first things first, you got to set your variables that you're going to use. So we've got we're going to utilize a file. We're going to build an XML file to upload into the JSS. So that's the first variable there, and we're just going to put it in temp so that when you reboot the machine, it's gone. Configuration profile ID, for this example, it was number 12. Then in this, we're going to hard code the user we're going to add in the real script we use. When you register, when you click to download, we're capturing that and passing that into the script. But for this example, we're just going to hard code in our test user. This next username and password is a local JSS account that has read and write capabilities for the API for mobile config profile. So depending on what you want what you want to do with the API, I highly recommend having a limited user that just has enough, to do enough permissions to do what you need to do. And then the JSS URL that you use to talk to the API. So it's your URL for your JSS /JSS resource. So this is the step where we read the list of users out of the scope for our configuration profile. So I'm going to go into more detail about what this is in the next slide. But so what we're doing is we're going to use curl to get the list, and then we're going to pipe that to XPath to parse what we want out of that XML. So curl is a tool, command line tool, to transfer data to or from a server. Here we're going to set it to a variable user list. The -v command is to be verbose about it, so when you're testing, you can see what's going on. Again, here we're passing in our variable for our our JSS URL. And then here's the, so mobile device configuration profiles. Oh, shoot. Sorry. I didn't realize that was, there's a clicker on the side, too. There's like this little rolly thing on the side. Oh, come on now. Okay. No. Sorry. Let's do it this way. Okay. This is where we want to be. Yes. Okay, so yeah, the curl command, v for verbose, the JSS URL, and then the API for the mobile configuration profile, ID, we're passing in the ID, and the subset we want is the scope. And then you provide the user, your API permissioned username and password. The X flag here is to tell curl that you're using a custom request, and the request we're getting is get, which is to read. When you run that, this is what you get. And actually, I've prettied this up so it's a little bit more readable. It would all be on one line, but this is the XML that comes out. So we see we've got the configuration profile, and then we already have a list of 3 users here, myself included, and some other information that we're not going to care about. So that's why we then pass this off to XPath to parse that down to just the pieces we want, which is just the list of users. So XPath limits, so we say we just want the configuration profile, scope, limitation, users, user. So then that just gives us the list of the users that we saw in the XML there. So, and this is much easier to work with. So now we got to add our new user to that list. So we set the new list to that list that we had, and then we add the new user. Now here we're providing the XML tags that need to wrap around the username and passing in our test user. And then we call a function to actually write out the XML to the file. So here's the function. And all we're doing is we're calling echo, and we're redirecting that into the file that we defined in the beginning. And so like the initial caret there right before the JSS XML, if you can see that, is so this one creates the XML file at the location that we had, and then the double carets here append to that file. So this is using what we saw initially, we're rebuilding that, and then our $1 down here, if you can see that, is the new list of users that we passed into the function, and then our closing XML for the file. So this is the result of when you open up the file that we just created. This is what you see. You see that previous 3 users and the test user, and the important thing here is, like all that other stuff that you saw from the original Git is gone. It's just the scope limitation and the list of those users, because that's all we care about, that's all we want to edit, and that's what we're going to upload back. This is the command that we use to write back into the JSS. Again, it's curl. We're to the mobile config profile, the ID, and this time we're not limiting to the scope because you can't write just to the scope. So that's the XML file takes care of that, and then your username and password. And this time we use put, and the -t flag is to tell curl that we're going to be using a file, and then we point it to the file that we're uploading. So here's what the limitation of the directory scope looked like before we ran our script. And then after you run it, you have another user. And now that user will get the config profile, the WebClip installed. So, the other thing I wanted to mention there is that the reason we use the whole list is because put's not additive, it replaces what's there. So if you're targeting the scope, the limitation of the scope, and you just try to put one user there, it's just going to erase who's there and just put in that one user. So that was a little thing that I ran into. It took me a couple tries to figure out, like, why is that not adding the user that I want? And I was just replacing everything. So other uses for the API. So this is, I use this for, well, I had another script that I did for adding the list of departments to your JSS. So if you've integrated with Active Directory and you're trying to auto map users to their departments, you have to have all those departments match up exactly to the names they are in Active Directory, and we have like 900 departments. So the only way to automate that is with the API. So I was able to create a list of, take a list of departments and use the API to put them in there. Otherwise, I'd be going in there and clicking on plus, typing it in, save, plus, type it in, save. Really tedious. Of course, you could add computers to a static group, which is what the original script was doing. You could add a computer to a policy. And one of my favorite things is being able to schedule reports. So every week, my boss wants to see stats on how many machines do we have left to be that are, need to be file vaulted, or how many 10.6 machines do we still have out there. So I can use the API to schedule that report and email it to myself. So I don't have to go into the JSS and, go click on the button to make it happen. And there's a whole lot of stuff that you can do. And there's been a lot of great sessions this week on what you can do with the API. So my inspirations for this were my FileMaker developer, Tom Puckett, of course, Andrew for the original script, and your API URL. I mean, go in there if you haven't looked at that to see all the stuff that you can do with the API. And there's a lot of stuff in there, and sort of the sky's the limit almost. And that's it. So we've got, here's our contact information. I do have a copy of the script up on my GitHub. That's almost all that's up there. I haven't been really using GitHub very much. And then Scott's email address. And so now we're open for questions, comments, what have you. So Scott will be running around with the microphone.
All right, yeah. So thank you, Jahan. Can we get a round of applause for Jahan?
Thank you.
Awesome. So hopefully this was really helpful for everyone. We'll take a few minutes now and do some question and answer. We do also have an ex-FileMaker guy in the room to help out with any FileMaker specific questions that you guys might have. So we'll start taking them now. And I'll run around with the mic for those that have questions.
Anybody?
All right. No, it's
there's one up there in the middle.
If you have a bunch of devices putting data up to the JSS at the same time, how are you guaranteeing the data consistency?
So in this example, it's the FileMaker server that is running the script to talk to the API. Okay. Honestly, so it's only one source. It's not running on the phone, it's running on the server.
Okay.
But we haven't really, that's a good question. We haven't really load tested or tried to break it in that way. And I'm not sure if, and we're reading and writing like right back. So I would hope that that wouldn't happen, but we have not tested that.
Okay, thanks.
So is the content from the database, is it stored on the phone or is it cached, or how does that working when you're offline?
Yeah, the database, so you're downloading the database which has all of the information in it. so that it's offline and it's local on the phone. We did not want to install our global address list on everybody's phone in their regular contacts because nobody wants that. So this way you can like look up that one person that you don't have, or the occasional thing, or like this adds a lot of functionality that you wouldn't get, and that we wouldn't be able to put into the regular contacts app.
What's the size of the database? What's the size on the phone? I mean, how large is that?
It's like 150 meg. There's one down there. And there's another one up there.
So you're only using the database read? You're not writing like the favorites or the quick list that's stored elsewhere to that same database?
Okay, the edits that you make to the database to add people to favorites and add and make your custom groups. What happens when those are written locally in the database. When you go to update, one of the other advantages to registering when you go to download it in the first place is that the FileMaker server knows who you are, and it has its own cache store. So when you click the update button, it actually writes that back to the FileMaker server and adds it to the new changes and brings it back down. So the server has a copy of your edits. There was
How have your
Chip.
how have your users? How have your users received it? Has this been? They've been really excited about this. I mean, it's a lot of the plumbing here, but how about the people that are using it?
Yeah. So actually, the initial, when Scott was still working with it, he remembers like we wanted this for ourselves because it was hard to find people. You'd have their email address in one place, you'd have their location in another place, you'd have their phone number someplace else. So just trying to get in touch with somebody was difficult. But it really came down from our executives who, they're running around, they want to look something up, and they're running to a meeting with somebody who they maybe haven't met before. They're in the elevator and they're like, oh, where does this person sit? And then this is like a pet project of our CTO, and yeah, the users that we've rolled it out to so far are loving it. They think it's really cool. There's one back there.
Why are you adding the users to the configuration policy scope and not like to a user group, for example? Is it because you have only one, or?
I'm sorry, say that again. I couldn't hear.
Why are you adding the users to the scope of that configuration policy and not like say to a user group?
Oh, you mean to like have a static group that we
Exactly.
use? I don't know. That's just the way that we did it.
Yeah, for the script that queries and uploads back to the JSS, did you have any security constraints for having the password in plain text in the script, and were you able to address that in some manner?
Both the JSS and the FileMaker server are both in the DMZ and talk directly to each other. So that password, it just is, it's in the clear, but it's in, it's just on our network, and it doesn't go externally. But yeah, our DMZ is heavily firewalled, and you have to routes between servers internally have to be added individually. And
how are you kicking off that API script? Using PHP or something like that?
That's a question for my FileMaker guys. They actually had made a plugin for their FileMaker server that handles that, but I'm not sure what the trigger is there on the FileMaker server. Anybody else?
All right, any last questions? No, one more?
Have you done any calculations on what it cost development time wise to create this start to finish? We have a need like you do in our company to have a directory but can't get executive approval. You had a pet project, we can't get their approval because of the development cost for your FileMaker teams and various teams to do that. Do you have an idea what this costs you to produce?
I do not, no. I could ask, I could find out and see what the, I mean, on my side, this did not take me very long, but of course the FileMaker developers put in a whole lot of hours, I'm sure, making this thing. Anybody else?
All right, well, thank you very much, Jahan, and we appreciate you coming.
Thanks for coming.